Hello, folks. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. Donald Trump somehow is continuing to seem like the anti-war candidate, the anti-war president compared to Joe Biden and many others, which is bizarre. And don't worry, it doesn't mean he's good on a million other things, but at least at the moment, in certain ways, Donald Trump has reportedly ordered the shutdown of the U.S. military base in Greece. No, Alexandroupoli, Greece. According to Greek newspaper, the decision marked a shift in U.S. military strategy in the region and raised concerns among Greek officials. The base has been a key logistical hub for U.S. and NATO operations in southeastern Europe. Its presence had been a point of contention, though, to Turkey and to Russia. And apparently he did it at the request of Russia and Turkey to close the base. So is it a quid pro quo? Absolutely. Who knows what the deal is? But the point is, in many ways, Trump is seeming like how fucking bad the Democrats have to be to make it so that Donald Trump, a Republican lunatic, and don't worry, the Democrats are lunatics too, Republican lunatic, is the Mr. Peace. How bad do you have to be? The Democrats should ask themselves that. But here he is again talking about how he's going to be ending the war in Ukraine in the coming weeks. Here's Trump, and he's sitting next to Macron. And you got to keep in mind that France, although France initially tried to fight against the Ukraine proxy war, they were one of the main vocal countries against, ripping up all the agreements, the Minsk Accords, and everything else, and having just ending up with Russia invading Ukraine and sparking this whole thing. Well, actually, the spark came in 2014. Anyway, we don't need to get into that. But point is, France started out as very anti-proxy war, then became very pro-proxy war, pro-proxy war. And they, even to the point where they were saying they would be they're willing to send French troops into Ukraine. Absolutely insane stuff. But so here's Macron sitting next to Trump. I believe this is today.
I think the war could end soon. Within weeks. Yeah, I think so. Right? Don't you think so? I'd like to have you. I think we could end it within weeks if we're smart. If we're not smart, it'll keep going, and we'll keep losing young, beautiful people that shouldn't be dying. And we don't want that. And remember what I said. This could escalate into a third world war. And we don't want that either.
And he's absolutely right. Like, how bad do our politicians, our government have to be for Trump to be the only one willing to say that this could escalate into a third world war, that it could be a nuclear exchange? Of course, Trump also responsible for tearing up a lot of the nuclear agreements, which Biden then continued. Trump responsible for increasing the nuclear stockpile, which Biden then continued. So you gotta decide day to day where this guy stands. But at the moment, he is pushing for a peace that the U.S. has not at all pushed for, as he said he would. There's other things in his comments there that you can certainly get quite furious about. For example, apparently the men and women in Ukraine are young, beautiful people, seeing young, beautiful people dying. The people in Gaza and Palestine, I don't think he's ever called them young, beautiful people. I don't think they're young, beautiful people to him at all. He has instead publicly called for ethnically cleansing Gaza. So what's the difference there? Why is it Ukraine is young, beautiful people and Gaza is not? Why is that, Donald Trump? Why do you feel that? I'm sorry to shit on the parade. I don't know if that's an expression, but you've heard of a ticker tape parade. This is a shitter tape parade. I'm sorry to shit on the parade of those of you who are just going, yay, Trump's the best. He's a peace candidate, peace president. He's the best. No, he's publicly endorsed ethnic cleansing in other regards. So it depends on country to country. Now, if you want the deeper reasoning behind all of this, which I have given before, but it needs to continue to be expressed because a lot of the mainstream will not, why is Trump at the heart of it, really doing it? Well, he views the true threat to American empire, to American hegemony, to be China. And many in the U.S. government believe that. But whereas Biden and his administration and the people operating Washington during his term believed that the best way to defeat China was to separate Russia from China, sanction the hell out of Russia, hopefully crush Russia, and therefore take away a partner of China and a partner to Europe and push most of Europe back into a vassal state situation underneath the United States. Well, they viewed that was the best way to go. Trump views the different way to go, which is befriend Russia, end the proxy war in Ukraine, and ask good new friend Russia to no longer work with China, at least not nearly as much. Also, Trump, in another clip from this same meeting, references the economic opportunities in Russia, and he specifically references they have a lot of, he says, minerals or something like that, rare earth elements in Russia. I think he says minerals or something. And why is that so important? Well, because we get most of the important rare earth minerals that we need to make all of our electronics. We get most of them from China. And with certain minerals, China is like the producer of like 90% of them. However, Russia has a bunch. Ukraine has some. Greenland has some. Have you heard any of these countries mentioned? So Trump knows that in order to have this Cold War, at least at the moment with China, he's going to need to find those minerals somewhere else. And well, new friend Russia would like to maybe trade with us on that in that area. But yeah, so in this episode, I'm going to get deeper into whether Trump will actually cut the Pentagon budget like he said he's going to. We'll be digging into that a little with the help of Stephen Simler's article. But real quick, thank you guys. I'm seeing in the comments that you loved the first ever episode of Unredacted Tonight. I've brought back, in many ways, I've brought back my TV show Redacted Tonight. It's now completely independent. It has no connection to RT or anyone else. It's just me doing it. And if you haven't seen the first episode, I hope you will check it out. It's easy to find looking up Unredacted Tonight, but also I put it here at the top of the comments thread on most of the platforms. But yeah, it's out. People seem to like it. Episode 2 will be out this Thursday evening, East Coast time, Thursday afternoon Pacific, and Thursday in the middle of the goddamn night for those of you in Britain. But yeah, thank you guys so much for supporting it, for letting me know that it's what you like to see, and because I'll be honest, takes a crazy amount of effort, and right now I am losing my hat on it, as they say, losing ridiculous amounts of money to try and make it happen. But, it does mean a lot that you guys are supporting it. And another way to support it is to become a member at leecamp.net or patreon.com/leecamp. But anyway, let's keep going here. And I think if we have time, I think at the end of this live stream, I'll play 3 minutes of that premiere episode before we head off into the deep blue sea, dark blue yonder. No, not working. Just stop. Just don't do it. Why'd you have to go there? But so while Trump is saying that he's ending this proxy war, he says we could end it in a couple of weeks. Also, another thing to point out about that 30 seconds there is Trump says we could end it, right? I thought this wasn't a proxy war. I thought, according to most of the U.S. empire, I thought this was a war between Russia and Ukraine. Am I crazy? Because Donald Trump was saying we could end it. And he looked over to the president of France and said, right, we can end it. We can end it in a few weeks. So you're saying this is a war between U.S. and France against Russia. That's interesting. That's funny. The U.S. could end it. I didn't realize that was on our plate. I thought we had nothing to do with it. I thought it was a proxy war. I thought it wasn't our thing. No, U.S. can end it at any time. Same with the genocide in Gaza. U.S. can end it anytime they want. But as Trump is saying he's going to end this Ukraine war, the New York Times front page is doing a hard push for keep this war going. For the love of God, never stop this war. Their top articles, like 4 of them, are all about why you need to keep killing people in Ukraine. Please, please keep murdering everyone in Ukraine. This is liberal America for you. We're supposed to believe that this is the so-called, they call them left wing, right? Idiots call them the left wing. This is the quote unquote left wing of America. Sue in the chats wants to know if I set up supporter payments on PayPal. There is some way to do that. You can do it, but I don't have a link for it. Most people support me on either Patreon or leecamp.net, which is my locals page. Sorry to interrupt. But so this is so-called liberal America. A lot of people think this is the left. The left should be right, anti-war, right? That's what one of the things the so-called left should be, is anti-war. They should not want murdering of innocent people. That sounds like a kind of lefty thing. Now, you and I hopefully both know that liberal is not lefty. There are some liberals who are lefty and are confused, but liberal is actually, if you were to put it in many other countries, it would be considered a right-winger in many ways. Anyway, here's New York Times. Top articles. Putin waited for the West to waver on Ukraine. Trump obliged. Waver meaning create peace, right? Putin waited for maybe Putin waited for the U.S. to stop the goddamn proxy war. Maybe that's what he waited for. In One Woman's Life, the story of Ukraine's war. Then we're your true friends, Xi tells Putin as Trump courts Russia. So that's probably the closest to a true headline. But of course, they don't realize they're admitting within that the real reason Trump wants to end this proxy war is so that he can get the minerals and resources he needs to focus on a great power conflict with China. Fair or not, Zelensky is angering Trump. Is his style hurting Ukraine? Zelensky, stop being so rude. You be nice to Trumpy so that he's nice to you. You're our puppet. Don't act mean to Trump. European leaders visit Ukraine as Trump's America steps back. Oh, thank goodness. European leaders are stepping in and saying they'll help with the proxy war. Why American businesses aren't raring to get back into Russia. So, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then also a video. So, if you count the video, 7. You got 7 articles and segments at the top of the New York Times saying, whatever you do, continue the war in Ukraine. Continue massacring people in Ukraine. Continue this absolutely pointless, up war in Ukraine. Continue to basically kill people that have no idea that they're just pawns. Many of them have no idea that they're just pawns in the conflict for the U.S. to maintain our hegemony, to maintain our world ownership. That's what it is. And the New York Times wants to send you a barrage of articles to keep supporting this war. Okay. I've given you, make sure you click thumbs up, everybody. If you're watching right now, click thumbs up, do it. I've given you many reasons to say Trump seems to be a peace president compared to Biden, at least, compared to other things. But here's Stephen Simler has done a rundown. Is Trump really cutting the Pentagon budget? And he starts off by talking about, Stephen Simler does great work, by the way, if you haven't read his stuff. The Washington Post appeared to break some remarkable news this week, meaning last week. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth reportedly directed his department to come up with a plan to cut 8% of projected annual military spending in each of the next 5 years. You add up the 8% for 5 years, that's a shit ton of military spending that could be cut. Wow, that is breaking news. You are so right, Washington Post. That is breaking news that we're going to cut 8% every year for the next 5 years. Meanwhile, in the past, I think that doesn't work. But anyway, in the past, we haven't ever cut the military budget, really. Not recently. Thank you, Tony, for becoming a YouTube member. We have not, that is not a thing. So this is amazing. This is groundbreaking. Thank you, Washington Post. Steven Simler goes on. That's striking because the Pentagon is among the last places to expect an administration of either party to seek dramatic spending reductions. That's not what happened, though. Hegseth never ordered any cuts, which you would think would be important to have cuts at the Pentagon. Probably have to have the person in power order those cuts. Never happened. Instead, he merely wanted to shift funding from some military programs to others. That's not cutting the Pentagon budget in any way. That is just reshuffling the Pentagon budget. So Washington Post is reporting a completely false, at least, headline to their article. The original article. So here, this becomes a wonderful example of media literacy, understanding our media, understanding how destructive and egregious and gross they are. But here's the first headline that the Washington Post started with. They said, Trump administration orders Pentagon to plan for sweeping budget cuts. Again, wow, that is that. And by the way, Trump did not, I played the clip last week. Trump said he could see cutting the military budget by 50%. And I covered that when it happened. He did not order the military to cut its budget at all yet. And I don't know if you know this. Trump says a lot of things. So just know that. So so they say Trump administration orders Pentagon sweeping budget cuts. Not true. In the subheading, it says the directive detailed in a memo dated Tuesday exempts a handful of programs, including President's expanded military mission along the U.S.-Mexico border. Okay, then they change. As the day goes on, they change the subheading. So it still says Trump orders plan for sweeping budget cuts at the Pentagon. Subheading now says a senior Pentagon official said that money saved through the cuts could be realigned to other defense priorities that President Trump has. If the cuts are realigned to other Pentagon garbage, that is not a cut. That is not a Pentagon cut. That's a reallocation. That's a move around. That's a shifting. That's a shell game. Okay? And I posted that this may be the quickest admission of a mainstream media outlet ever that they lied to you in the headline, because literally they have the headline saying ordering sweeping budget cuts and the subheading saying never mind, could just be realigned. So literally the subheading tells you they're lying. That is a record for the Washington Post, for any mainstream media. That's a record of lying admission. And they keep, I believe that article's still up with that heading. So Simler then gets into it. He says, arms industry stocks dropped sharply last week as Trump said he aimed to get major powers, including the U.S., to shrink their military and nuclear arsenals. And I covered that, which is a big deal. But again, it's just him saying that. It's not yet been seen at all. One of the first meetings he said, I want to have, it was with President Xi of China and Putin of Russia. I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half, and we can do that. We're going to have them spend a lot less money. We're going to spend a lot less money, because Trump's not sure if you heard him the first time he said that sentence. We're all spending a lot of money that we could be spending on other things that are much more productive. He then also, this would be, if Trump had a long track record of always keeping his word, this would be incredible news. The problem is he has a long track record of saying all kinds of shit. So who knows? But this would be a big deal. He also said, which would also be a big deal if it ever happened, there's no reason for us to be building new nuclear weapons. We already have so many. You could destroy the world 50 times over, 100 times over, and here we are building new nuclear weapons, and they're building nuclear weapons. Oh, and they're building nuclear weapons. Actually, using those weapons means probably oblivion, Trump said. So, one can hope that Trump is maybe as afraid of nuclear weapons as he's afraid of sharks. For those of you who don't know that, Trump is terrified of sharks, and he brings it up in just about every campaign speech. Trump's calls to reduce military spending, nuke stockpiles, and tensions with rival powers are among the most sensible ideas you'll hear come out of the Oval Office. They are unprecedented if they actually happen. However, Trump's commitment to achieving those goals isn't exactly credible, considering how his first term went. When it came to cutting military, to bringing troops home, Trump essentially never delivered. He delivered on other things. He delivered on attempting to build a big, stupid wall. But in his first term, he did not show that he would cut the military's budget, that he would decrease the number of missiles being dropped. None of it. So we'll see if he delivers on any of that this time around. Biden's policies were largely extensions of Trump's. After Trump ramped up nuclear weapons spending in his first term, Biden doubled down on the same insane practice for the next 4 years. And here's a chart. Biden continued Trump's nuclear weapons buildup. 2023 Biden budget was $53 billion for nuclear weapons. 2025 Biden proposal was $69 billion for nuclear weapons. Trump's budget, 2021, was $48 billion. Anyway, it just keeps going up and up and up, the amount we spend on nuclear weapons, which would, of course, kill us all. So it's utterly insane. Washington appears to be under the false impression that more military spending means more security. That isn't true. The stated goal of increased military spending has been to beat back, outcompete rival powers, but that strategy has failed. And I've talked many times about how we know it's not for security. And the way you know this is not for security, that building up our military and building it up, you know how you know it's not for security? Because we could be the most secure nation on earth if you spent a tiny fraction of the Pentagon's budget and gave everyone clean water. If you spent a tiny fraction of the Pentagon's budget and made sure everybody was food secure. If you spent a tiny fraction of the Pentagon's budget and gave everybody clothing or whatever other thing that they need the most, that would be, you'd have 50% of the world would be benefiting from this in a big way. And the U.S. would be the most secure nation on earth. We'd be beloved by most of the planet Earth. Instead, we are hated by most of the planet Earth, and we're viewed as the country that is most likely to cause harm and bring war. So you know it's not about security. Thank you, Jay Tolbert, donated over on Rumble. Jay says, congrats on the new Unredacted Tonight show, Lee. It was awesome as expected. Will there be a VIP version like previously? Thank you, Jay. I'm tired just reading your comment, man. Just like, I can't make anything else. Yes, for those of you who recall, there were actually two Redacted Tonight shows every week when I was back at RT America 3 years ago. One was Redacted Tonight that pretty much everyone's familiar with. Some people were less familiar with Redacted Tonight VIP, which was my interview show, where it was not very comedic, by design. It was just talking with awesome minds and awesome people. And I enjoyed doing it, but it was at this moment, no. Absolutely not. I'm killing myself just to make Redacted Tonight. So, but thank you so much for supporting this show. I do plan on maybe having, sprinkling in special guests into Unredacted Tonight, as I had John F. O'Donnell in the first episode. I do not have a special guest on the second episode coming out Thursday, but I will keep doing that. So hopefully John will be just the beginning of many special guests at Unredacted Tonight. For those of you who don't know, Unredacted Tonight just aired and last Thursday premiere, and it is much beloved according to the comments. And I'd love for everybody who hasn't seen it to check it out. You can get it at youtube.com/@RealLeeCamp. You can get it at the top of my Twitter page, at Lee Camp. You can get it at the top of my Instagram. It's pretty much any page I have, it's pretty much at the top. It's on rumble.com/LeeCamp as well. So check it out. Okay, so About whether larger military brings security, Stephen Semler says that strategy has failed. Trump's buildup didn't deter Russia from invading Ukraine, and Russia's poor military performance only highlighted how much the U.S. had overstated and over-budgeted for the threat posed by its conventional forces. Meanwhile, Biden's Pentagon spending spree helped dramatically escalate tensions with China. Today's Pentagon budget, adjusted for inflation, just about matches the peak spending levels of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. So right now, adjusted for inflation, our Pentagon is the same size as when we're in massive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's no coincidence that military spending surges during particularly idiotic and destructive moments in U.S. foreign policy history. Here's a chart of the Trump-Biden military buildup, and they say Stephen says it trounces Reagan's. You can see that in light gray is where Reagan's buildup was, and now we're in this we've never gone back to pre-Iraq war military size, and right now, adjusted for inflation, we're at the same size as the peak of the Iraq war. Of the post-World War II military buildups, Reagan's most closely resembles the current one. There are many similarities, like how both involve cutting social welfare. So make the military bigger, make the death machine bigger, make the world's largest money laundering scheme bigger, and cut social welfare. Cut money from those who need it the most. That's what we're seeing. And Trump is certainly going after those who need help the most. And it is amazing because it kind of reminds me of Israel's propaganda with October 7th. It's like that you could tell parts of the truth of October 7th and have it be upsetting and gut-wrenching enough. Instead, Israel decided to add on all these things that have been completely debunked, like killing all these babies and everything. It's kind of similar with liberal media right now. You could pinpoint things that Trump is doing that are bad enough. There are going to be efforts, they're just getting started, but to go after Social Security and Medicaid and things like that. There are plenty of things Trump is legitimately doing that are infuriating and upsetting. But instead, you have them a lot of the time getting people to freak out about things that either aren't what they sound like. Oh my God, he closed USAID. That's how America helps people around the world. No, it's how America coups people around the world. That's not why he shut them down, but still. Then another flip out was the telehealth Medicare, Medicaid. What's the difference? I confuse them every once in a while. But they during COVID, they allowed you to use Medicare to get telehealth. And the thing was that was set. So there's articles all over the place. Trump is ending telehealth for the poorest Americans, those who need it the most. But in fact, that was set to expire in the coming months anyway. It's just that Trump is not doing any push to re-up it, to keep it going. So that is, it'd be great if Trump was like, we need telehealth for those who need it the most. That doesn't sound much like him, but so to act like he just signed something that got rid of telehealth for the poorest people in America, it was already set to expire before he got into office. I mean, that was already in the cards. He's just not pushing to change that. Anyway, you've got a lot of these kind of false liberal headlines, hair on fire stuff floating around, which does not mean that Trump is a good guy. It just means that the liberal media doesn't want to, they don't want to give you the truth that certain things Trump is doing are actually good. Closing that U.S. NATO base in Greece. Awesome. Wonderful. But that doesn't stop the fact that he also publicly endorsed ethnic cleansing on television in front of Netanyahu, with Netanyahu smiling like he'd just gotten a hand job under the table at his high school cafeteria. Anyway, corporate profits soared during both buildups, meaning Reagan and Biden-Trump. But whether either improved military effectiveness that much, the most basic expectation, is up for debate. There's also the fact I don't want military effectiveness. I don't want our military to kill more effectively. Go yourself. The demand Reagan's budgets put on the arms industry far outstripped supply. Weapons companies capitalized on this, charging inflated prices. So they charged Reagan more, so he spent a lot more on the same shit. Anyway, you'll notice that surges in military spending accompany surges in troop deployments, except under Reagan, Trump, and Biden. So these two charts, one shows military spending, the other shows troops deployed abroad. And there's no increase under Reagan, and yet his budget goes way up. There's no increase under Biden, Trump of troops deployed, and yet budget goes way up. So, very interesting points by Stephen Simler. And I think if you want to be fair to both sides and both bullshit arguments on either side, it would be amazing if Trump cuts the Pentagon's budget. I don't see it happening. Maybe a fraction. And yes, firepower. Thank you, Seven, for on the locals chat, who said telehealth is critical for rural citizens. Yes, it is. It's critical for rural citizens. It's critical for the disabled. It's critical for poor people who don't own a car, who can't get around that easily. In many ways, it's critical for so many. And yet you had basically a joint effort by Congress to not do anything about it expiring in the coming months, at least so far. Maybe that'll change tomorrow, and maybe they'll suddenly run around to get telehealth for everybody. Okay, I want to shift gears here to the fact that the Wall Street Journal has just admitted, and the Wall Street Journal, is a right-wing capitalist piece of garbage paper that you should wipe your ass with, but only if there's nothing else in the house to wipe your ass. Like if you are all out, there's no toilet paper, there's no paper towels, there's no napkins, there's no you use the plastic bags the bananas came in, you used your cat. Once you're out of everything, then wipe your ass with the Wall Street Journal, because it can cause infection. Okay. And I cannot say that clearly enough. Wall Street Journal, especially on sensitive ass skin, can cause infection. Okay. I'm glad we got through that. But the Wall Street Journal, even the largest capitalists in the world, are admitting we now live in a Plutonomy. What the hell is the Plutonomy? You probably heard the term plutocracy, which is rule by the wealthy. We absolutely 129% are in a plutocracy, ruled by the wealthy. Plutonomy is an economy that is basically premised on the behavior of the wealthy. And this is not about control, although they also have that, but this is about their spending habits. What they spend and invest in, that becomes the heart of the economy. So you have a tiny percentage of Americans, how they spend their money is what matters for the economy to continue, quote unquote, growing, because in capitalism you have to keep growing, like cancer. When cancer keeps growing, always goes well. It always ends well when cancer just grows endlessly. So I'm sure this will go great for us. Okay, everybody, let's just keep growing forevers. Gonna be fine. But here it is, Wall Street Journal. I cannot read their actual article because I do not pay the $400 a month to have a subscription or whatever it is. But their headline is, the U.S. economy depends more than ever on rich people. The highest earning 10% of Americans have increased their spending far beyond inflation. Everyone else hasn't. And I have numbers from another article about this same topic, so that we don't have to go off of just the headline. And the first time I heard about a Plutonomy was when was in the zeitgeist movement to find the book where Peter Joseph reveals that or he covers the fact that there was a leaked memo from, I think, Goldman Sachs. Don't quote me on that, but saying that America was headed towards a plutonomy, where the spending and buying of the wealthiest 10% would eventually become most of what matters. And the government would not need to care at all about the bottom, 90, 80%. All right, where the hell's this article? Here we go. Well, yeah, they put a positive spin on it because this is another economics article, but they say wealthier consumers bolster the U.S. economy. Consumer price, that's one way to put it. Another way is to put we are both ruled and controlled and everything by the wealthiest Americans, and now it's increasingly their spending and their behavior is all that matters in our economy. So why should you even care what the bottom 80% are doing? Consumer price inflation for February was much higher than expected. But the 10% of earners households making about $250,000 a year or more are splurging on everything from vacations to designer handbags, buoyed by big gains in stocks, real estate, and other assets. Of course, stocks in corporate America have, for the most part, gone up pretty heavily since Trump was elected. And why is that? Because whatever tiny little regulations remained on corporate America, Trump is trying to rip them off. There wasn't much remaining on the largest capitalist state in the world, but whatever remained, Trump's trying to rip up. There were some very rare exceptions where the Biden administration would not allow mergers of large companies, which of course creates monopolies, which of course fucks over the little guy. So there were very rare examples, but Trump is making sure those no longer exist, of stopping mergers, stopping monopolies. Anyway, to continue from the article, those consumers now account, so the top 10% account for basically 50%, 49.7, 50% of all spending, a record in data going back to 1989, according to an analysis by Moody's. 3 decades ago, they accounted for about 36%. So the top 10%, and by the way, you notice they call them earners as opposed to the rich. Because when you say they're earning $250,000 a year, not all of them, in fact, a lot of them are not earning it. Many of them are making it on capital gains. They're making it on selling a lot. Selling some land they bought up at a higher price, selling stock that they sat on long enough. So it's, you call them earners, it sounds good. So there's a lot of like propaganda language in this article, but what it says is still that the top 10% making $250,000 a year or more account for 50% of all spending. All this means that economic growth is unusually reliant on rich Americans continuing to shell out. Basically, the moment the richest of the rich stop spending like crazy, the house of cards will collapse. Spending by the top 10% alone accounted for almost 1/3 of GDP. And that number just keeps getting bigger in terms of the amount that the rich are in control of our economy. It really is. It's becoming the top 10% and everyone else. And everyone else are becoming less and less important to the behaviors of the government, the behaviors of the state governments, the behaviors of corporate America. Corporations aren't as much, they don't care as much about the behavior of what they view as the poor. Increasingly, it's just about the rich. And this also explains why the government would care less and less about things like, food stamps and Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security and everything, because the poor are mattering less in the economy. So who cares if they can survive? Who cares if they're able to get enough money each month to spend on an extra shirt, an extra jacket? They just matter less and less is what this says. And I love that they try and These articles some of them try to put a fun and good spin on it. Wealthier consumers bolster the economy. Hurrah! Okay, let's keep going here. But I do want to remind everybody, I know I said it earlier, but sometimes people will come and go from the live stream. First episode of Unredacted tonight, my new comedy show. Luckily, I'm happy to say people seem very happy with it. I'm excited that I'm able to create this. It's once a week. It'll air Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you can go watch it anytime after. So it's free to watch. While I'm talking about it, I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat so you guys can go enjoy it if you haven't already. But yeah, it's every week, and subscribe and hit the bell icon, but they might not tell you about it. They probably won't. So it'd be better if you just show up, just go watch it every week. That'd be awesome. And tell friends about it. Also, you can join the free email list by texting the word unredacted to 33777. It is free to join that email list. That only works in the US, by the way. You can also join up at leecamp.com. You should see a pop-up window to join up in the free email list. But yeah, I'm glad everybody liked it. And by the way, this week's episode, if you thought last week's episode was good, this week's episode gonna be a banger. All right, man, gonna be good. Trust me. There may be an extended segment on the Hannibal Directive. I didn't say it. What? Who? Okay. I haven't talked for a little while about Luigi Mangione. So let's give you a little update on him. He had his court appearance. Much of the nation continues to be in love with him, which is so fun to watch. It's just the best. It just shows so much about where America is right now. Like half of America is like their heartthrob is the guy who assassinated a big pharma CEO. Anyway, Mangione received a large donation after Trump threatened to give him the death penalty. Apparently, Trump has said this more than once, that Luigi should get the death penalty. And of course, Trump would say that because what is the thing that Trump and other oligarchs fear the most? Fill in the blank. People rising up. So this is the most threatening, scary thing to them. And an anonymous donor has given $11,000 to Luigi Mangione's defense fund, citing President Trump's executive order on the death penalty as their reason for giving. Oh, I didn't realize he'd done an executive order. I thought he just said it. Oh, God, he's so stupid. The donor said the death penalty should not be politicized, but said they are concerned, given Trump's executive order, that it will continue to be. I am also concerned about the severe infringement on the defendant's right to a fair trial and due process, since his juries are effectively pre-tainted. As of Thursday evening, the legal defense fund for Mangione had raised $500,000. Mangione released a statement to the public on a website managed by his attorney, thanking people who have written him letters for their support. So yeah, he's still got a lot of support as he works his way through the justice system. And Trump basically just verified. He accidentally verified what we all kind of knew. That there's nothing more scary to oligarchs than the people supporting someone like Luigi Mangione, someone that stands up against the extreme, horrific destruction of people's lives by corporate America, by big pharma, by the big health insurance, the scam that it is. And anyway, big donation from someone. Okay, let's jump to good old Jon Stewart. and I keep wanting to do, the reason I've held back on doing this 2-minute segment, playing this 2-minute clip for a couple weeks, is because I keep wanting to do a much longer segment on Jon Stewart's entire hour-long interview with Jen Psaki, the former press secretary, at the former White House press secretary. So, but I haven't had a chance to do that, so I'm just going to play this. I'm just going to do a segment on this one clip for now. Maybe I'll get to the longer one later. But anyway, here's Jon Stewart talking to Jen Psaki, the press secretary under Biden, and now she has a MSNBC show, right?
I've been shocked by how undemocratic the Democratic Party can be.
Now, you'd think that's not a crazy statement, right? But here's her response.
Tell me more, what do you mean by, I don't disagree with you necessarily, but what do you mean by that?
What? But also, I might agree. But what? What? Who? What? No.
Necessarily, but what do you mean by that?
By putting their foot on the scales to get, make sure that Hillary Clinton comes out of the thing, or make sure that,
So there she is nodding along. I don't know if you've ever seen a kind of higher up in the Democratic Party, or at least a former higher up in the Democratic Party, admit that happened. Like Jon Stewart said it in a really polite way, put their foot on the scale. It's called rigging. It's called rigging the primaries. And put their foot on the scale. Oh, that's enough. And she said yes. Keep in mind, those of us who were screaming this from the hills when it was happening, when they were rigging everything against Bernie, we were called conspiracy theorists. We were called Russians. We were called all kinds of awful shit. Just not being Russian is awful, but just because we were telling the truth. And here they are. Yep, that's what it was. Yep.
That they're listening to that anger about the way that even the ACA, quite frankly, struck me as a very conservative.
You mean because it didn't have a public option in it?
Correct. That it didn't address the very thing that was causing the foundational upset. If I were to break this down narratively,
well, hold on, I'll keep going in a second, but again, watching Jon Stewart in these interviews is it's like watching them who spent their entire lives analyzing our politics, but still doesn't understand how the system works, even though there was a large Princeton study that showed us exactly how it works, which is 0% of anything gets through Congress. It gets through our government that doesn't align with corporate interests. 0. So now he should know that, but he's forgotten it or chooses to ignore it or whatever. So instead of being able to go, oh, of course there was no public option. Of course, getting any kind of healthcare through had to be a giant giveaway to insurance companies because nothing goes through Congress that isn't good for corporate America. And end of sentence. You don't need to sit there and why is it that so why? But the Democrats don't seem to. It's like, dude, one sentence. Nothing goes through our government that doesn't align with corporate America. 0. End of discussion. But instead, Jon Stewart's always in these but the Democratic Party. Anyway, of course, he wouldn't be where he is, meaning one of the biggest personalities in America, if he acted like it was any worse than he does.
If I were to break this down narratively, what I think the Democrats have forgotten is government may not be perfect, but it's the only thing large enough to offset multinational corporate exploitation and corruption.
That is true, unless the multinational corporations own, say it with me, the government. They have the levers of the state. They are running the show. There is almost no one allowed in Congress that is not aligned with corporate America. It's called inverted totalitarianism. A lot of people far smarter than me have written whole books about it. Go read one of them, John.
Mhm.
And if we don't act like that's urgent and that affects people's lives, then yeah, so if the big policies that we make are billions more dollars to insurance companies that we think are fucking people over left and right for their healthcare, so isn't that part of why people lost faith?
Yeah. So yes, I
Isn't that why people lost faith? It's John Stewart and I operate from, although we may agree on certain things or where we'd like certain things to be, we disagree on just like the central premise of how this system works. Democrats are not your friends, even if, meaning the ones in government, even if you want even if on their platform the thing it says is something you want, they are not actually fighting for it. Even if the DNC had on their platform universal health care, they're not actually fighting for it. He's under the assumption that they're trying, but they're not working hard enough to do these things. It is two polar opposite assumptions about where our world is. And I don't think mine's an assumption because mine's backed with a lot of evidence, loads of evidence.
People lost faith.
yeah. So yes, I think we're saying, well, I'm trying to say something similar, which is this.
Boom, boom.
Which is Democrats just lost everything. They control nothing. They control, I mean, they don't control the House. They don't control the Senate. They don't control the White House, and they don't control the Supreme Court. So now is the time to break some shit, right? And break some China.
They do control the email lists that continue to ask for money.
Well, that's true.
Now that's a good joke at the end. I appreciate that one. They certainly continue to do that, but she actually completely changed the subject, and essentially, and the idea of now is the time to break some shit. That implies that these people in the federal government that call themselves Democrats have any interest in breaking some shit, have any interest in going against corporate America. They don't, with maybe 3 exceptions in Congress. They are corporate America. They are the richest Americans. They are the oligarchy. Like this idea that, oh man, they've always wanted to create change and they just can't. It's so childish. It is fucking childish to even discuss things in this paradigm, in this Overton window. It is so childish. Someone in the chat, who was it? Carl says the left is a joke. If you're referring to this as the left, then no, this is not the left. This is Democrats. This is liberals. If you're referring to the left being a joke, meaning the left, the actual left, the real left, people like me and millions of others in America are a joke in that they have no real power of the government levers and no real power in corporate America, then that's true. That is true because there's a central reason. I'm not saying it'll always be this way, but that the left, the real left, not Jon Stewart and Jen Psaki, the real left has little to no power. And that central reason is that money really does rule our society. It is the force that drives the whole machine in every way, both in individual interactions and in the larger picture of where the U.S. is going or what a corporation decides to do. So both from the large to the small, money is driving everything. And what does the real left generally not have nor care much about? Money. So it is incredibly difficult. It is incredibly difficult. Okay. Oh, I know what I was going to do. This is before I wrap things up. I think this might be the second time ever on this live stream that I am going to read, maybe third, a page from a book. But it's so fucking good and powerful and meaningful that I can't resist it. And it also and it also is you'll see I'm biased. But the book is called Perfect Victims by Muhammad El Kurd, and I was recommended this book by Eleanor Goldfield, so give her credit. But it mainly is about, by perfect victims, he's talking about Palestinians, and he means that kind of tongue-in-cheek, that they are the perfect victims for this propaganda, for this genocide, for this ethnic cleansing, etc. Don't worry, this page I'm about to read actually is upbeat. I think it'll make you feel good. It makes me feel goddamn great. But, and I'll preface it by saying that part of the reason I do what I do, and part of the reason that I think you guys enjoy watching this stuff, or maybe enjoy my new show, Unredacted Tonight, or have enjoyed Redacted Tonight in the past, is because the revolution will have laughter. If anything. And of course, I'm adopting the Emma Goldman quote. She didn't say it this way, but the revolution will have dancing. She said something like, a revolution without dancing is not one I want to be a part of, or something like that. But anyway, here we go. A Palestinian man walks home in a war zone. There are sirens, explosions, and I'm going to skip ahead for some of this, but he approaches the Israeli soldier in the armored vehicle that is outside his home. It's basically a military tank. And he says to him, "How many times did I tell you not to park your tank in my driveway?" Here the man has created for himself a realm in which the mighty Merkava is but a boring nuisance, a bureaucratic measure, like doing your taxes. In this realm, the soldier's domination does not permeate into the psyche. His rifle is but a toy gun, and the tear gas in the air is just someone's nauseating perfume. In other words, irreverence is a dignifying act of refusal. For those confined by a siege or incarceration can be emancipated in the mind. To dig a tunnel, one must first imagine it before clawing at the floor. You have to, and I'm adding this part, you have to imagine your freedom before you can achieve it. Irreverence builds an alternative reality where the occupation is not impenetrable and the occupier is not indelible. The police officer is not all-knowing, nor is the sniper omnipresent. Here, the symbolic meaning of military barriers does not extend beyond the tangibility of their cement. For the speaker, the young activist, the academic, the taxi driver, irreverence is not just a rhetorical strategy, but a form of self-preservation and defiance, a stubborn rejection of psychological subjugation. Irreverence is the discursive equivalent of standing tall. I am grateful for the opportunity to be flippant, to satirize and ridicule my seemingly invincible colonizers, to belittle them, to banish them outside of my inner monologues, to turn them into a punchline. I know that the price of a joke is volatile. Sometimes it's libel, censure, harassment, even handcuffs, or shadow banning. Other times, it is free. That latitude, rare as it may be, is worth the gamble. In this realm, laughter is akin to faith in its ability to make wounds hurt a little less. Although I did not explore it much in this book, I have found solace in humor. I have found it in an agency, a mobility, a life. And much like faith consoles a bereaved mother by promising that her slain child who has been blown to bits is actually whole, in a better place, a martyr in heaven, laughter brings that better place to earth. The choice to be irreverent at the podium liberates both the speaker and the audience, albeit briefly. In the pause between the laughter that follows a sardonic observation, something sacred takes place in the unconscious. The grand stage becomes an intimate living room, and the tragedy at hand, whatever it may be, becomes a family affair. The speaker exiles the prestige of the podium from his mind, discarding the role he was coerced into rehearsing, proclaiming that he had been taught to whisper. The spectators are, for a moment, implicated in the spectacle, polluted by its imperfections, in on the joke. Something sacred occurs in the unconscious, a world without pretenses, where we look each other in the eye. And it's goddamn beautiful. It's so beautifully written. But I love it. Irreverence is a form of self-preservation and defiance, a stubborn rejection of psychological subjugation. So true. And I feel like that's the best of humor. That's the George Carlin and the Lenny Bruce at his prime, and Richard Pryor when he was blowing people's minds. That's the best. Bill Hicks at his prime. It's so great. And anyway, I wanted to give that as a little opening to my show. I'm going to show 3 minutes of it. Some of you probably already saw it, but the first episode of Unredacted Tonight. It's going to come out every Thursday with occasional exceptions, but I hope you will support it. And there's a lot of free ways to support it. It's not about dollars necessarily. It's you can tell people about it. You can share it, send the video to a friend. But you can also join up, by clicking the subscribe tab and the bell icon and all that stuff. I'll be back with another live stream tomorrow, by the way, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And I'm going to end on this and play a few minutes of it. And I'm not going to come back after I play the clip, but you can go see the whole thing over at youtube.com/@RealLeeCamp or rumble.com/LeeCamp. And I will see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Keep fighting. On today's show, I'll explain why, in God's name, I'm creating an independent version of my old show, Redacted Tonight. If you guessed I owe palimony to an emancipated chimpanzee with a killer lawyer, you would be right. I'll also reveal who actually rules the world, and their names are almost never mentioned in the mainstream media. Could it be because they own the media? And I'll bring some tips on how to survive the coming apocalypse. And by coming, I mean the apocalypse is so excited to end us that it had a premature eradication. And finally, a special guest you won't expect at all. Or maybe you will, in which case it'll be less surprising. Let's get started. Welcome to Unredacted Tonight. I'm Lee Camp, the most censored comedian in America. Where the money flows in this world decides the direction of humanity, whether we like it or not. So the people with the most money truly do control the world. And I don't just mean billionaires. There are entities with way more money than Donald Trump or Elon Musk, and they truly have the world's steering wheel, or rudder, depending on what form of locomotion you're most familiar with. Or if you're doing the locomotion, then I guess it would be your hips. Those ass clowns have the hips. That's an uncomfortable image on Jamie Dimon. Anyway, the answer as to who controls most of the world is the top asset management firms, aka shadow banks. And they have unimaginable wealth. The top 5 asset management firms are BlackRock with $10 trillion, trillion with a T, as in holy tits, that's a lot of money. Next, Vanguard with 9.3 trillion, UBS with 5.7 trillion, Fidelity 4.9 trillion, State Street 4.7 trillion, and my cousin Nathan with $250. He's just getting started. I probably should have left him off the list, but I owe him because he scored me some Molly so I could get through my kid's parent-teacher conference. Anyway, try to imagine how much money $1 trillion is. If you spent $100,000 a year, in order to spend $1 trillion, you would have to keep doing that for 10 million years. If you spent $100,000 a day, so you're either Kim Kardashian or a lunatic. If you spent $100,000 a day, in order to spend $1 trillion, it would take you 27,000 years, which is older than Larry Ellison's original head before he got the prosthetic one.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha ha.